Inaz and the Two Unmarriageable Lovers. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This story is narrated in 4 books. Book 1. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real love story of 2 unmarriageable lovers. Therefore, all names, characters, places, and incidents are either the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental. Chapter 80. The difficult final hours for Inaz. Upon her arrival at the Hamad International Airport in Doha City, Inaz has been received by 3 Arab female police officers. They have planned to take her directly to a small lock-up room and keep her there until the time of her next flight. The 3 Arab policewomen have not allowed any passengers to leave until they first escorted the detained Sudanese girl out of the airplane. Before taking her, they placed handcuffs on her hands and fetters on her legs. The Doha International Airport Police Authority had already received a message from the Bombay International Airport Police Authority informing them about the extradition of a Sudanese female citizen by the name of Inaz Ahmed Salah. The message was faxed as soon as the Qatar Airways airplane took off from the Indian soil. Then the extradited girl was kept in a small room for 7 long hours. During that time, Inaz has been given a small sandwich of fava beans and a bottle of water and another bottle of Fanta drink. There is a small toilet inside the telephone booth-like lockup room. From the time her plane left India, the mind of the Sudanese detained apostate girl Inaz is torturing her with many dark and agonizing thoughts. Her fears and troubles started while she was waiting in the departure hall at Bombay International Airport. She knew she had escaped twice from kidnapping plots of those evil Indian police officers. In the first plot, it was a mere coincidence that Mr. Vijay Alexander happened to be flying at the same time to Muscat City in Sultanate Oman. In the second attempt, again it was by chance she found that young Muslim woman inside the ladies' washroom and attempted to kill her, and then robbed her black burqa and used it to escape unnoticed by the policeman who was guarding the women's washroom entrance. Unfortunately, in this third kidnap, Inaz found herself ran out of all her miracles and lucks. She tried the washroom trick, but it did not work. This time, one of the Indian female police officers had entered with her inside the ladies' washroom and waited in front of the small toilet room until Inaz came out and took her back to the departure hall. As if someone had warned them about her last escape from the washroom at the New Delhi International Airport. Therefore, those female police officers followed her like her black shadow until they escorted her inside the Qatar plane. They did not leave until the time of the takeoff was announced. As soon as they exited the plane, the door was securely closed up. Until the moment the airplane's tires started moving on the runway, Inaz was clinging to the hope that she might be rescued through divine intervention. She prayed many times and petitioned in hot tears her good Lord Jesus Christ to save her one more time. But it seemed this time, the heaven shut its door, and God turned his face away from her. Inaz could forget any evil done to her except the moment her baby daughter was snatched from her lap and taken away. It was just at the Bombay International Airport entrance that a huge Indian female police officer grabbed her sleeping baby girl and took her out of her lap. The rough hands of the policewoman caused her baby Grace to wake up and began to cry. It was only at this moment she was informed that her baby daughter was going to be handed over to her Ethiopian father, and she was going to be transferred on the same day to Sudan. No matter how much she cried and begged, her tears fell on stony hearts and her pleadings in deaf ears. After her baby girl was taken away from her, Inaz was handcuffed and dragged like a dangerous female criminal and brought inside the departure hall of the Bombay Chhatrapati International Airport. The 3 hours and 10 minutes from Bombay to Doha for the unjustly extradited Sudanese girl are like 310 horrifying days. Her mind is torturing her and her heart troubling her. She is experiencing the mental tremor that only an unjustly condemned to death woman might go through on her execution day. She does not want to accept the fact that she has been separated forever from her brave lover and beloved husband Joseph, who endangered his life and rescued her from her evil father. She also cannot imagine how she is going to live her life after she got torn apart from the apple of her eye, her lovely and innocent baby daughter Grace. Why the loving and kind God allowed his children to go through such painful separation. Inaz asked herself, what evil had she done in life to deserve such cruel payback? Why did she always have to suffer wherever she went? Why did she have to be the victim everywhere her feet had taken her? Why nothing good had lasted for long in her life? And why does someone or some people always have to come and rob her happiness from her heart and in its place fill it with agony and sorrow? The 7 hours of waiting for her connecting flight in the small locked-up room are like another 7 centuries of painful and cruel mental and physical tortures. She wept until her body dried up of any more tears to shed. Inaz knows she is going on a one-way trip without any chance of return. Her feet, she concluded, will never again touch the Indian soil. She was told by the Bombay police that she had done a serious crime by making those highly offensive 3 recordings that led to a religious riot, deadly fight, and human casualties among the Sudanese students. Indian law, she was informed, has zero tolerance for publications that stir religious conflicts and violence. Due to her provocative recordings and unlawful debate, she was told, many innocent Sudanese Muslim boys and girls were brutally killed, and many more of them got injured. Therefore, Inaz anticipated that the Indian police had already informed the Sudanese embassy about the reason for her deportation. In those dark moments, she remembered her imprisoned father. She thought God is punishing her for what she had done to him. When she was at school, she had been taught that God can forgive any sin except the sins that cause the wrath of the parents against their disobedient son or rebellious daughter. At this junction, Inaz recollected her father's bitter curses on her and her husband and their yet-to-be-born baby girl. He spoke those curses against her and her family when they were inside the compound of her holy sanctuary in the church of Bandra. Therefore, she thought God had heard his complaints and granted his petition. In the meantime, it is 9:15 p.m. when her Ethiopian husband Joseph Abraha began to hear heavy knocking on the outside door of his apartment. Who would be so rude to hammer someone's door in that uncivilized manner? Only a bad person can do such a crazy thing. Those are the thoughts that came to Joseph's mind. No matter who may be, madman or bad man, he has to respond to his knocking and open the door. From the first day, his beloved wife Inaz was unjustly arrested and taken behind bars. Not a single day had passed without Joseph visiting her in jail. He did not want his wife to keep their 6-month-old baby daughter with her inside the filthy and rotten Indian jail, but Inaz insisted to take her Grace and breastfeed her. Moreover, the mother knew that she might not be able to sleep at night if her baby girl was not lying sleeping by her side. More than that, the loving wife did not want her good husband to miss his classes. She assured him that very soon she would be released and returned home. For that reason, she encouraged him to attend his medical college as he used to do before. Every day, after his classes were over, the loving husband went to a restaurant and bought food and soft drink for his unjustly detained wife and took them to her in the women's jail. Although the Indian jail authority will not allow outside food, still each day Joseph bribed the female guards and through them smuggled the food to his wife. Whenever he came, through those bribes, he was allowed to meet his imprisoned wife and spend time talking to her. That daily routine went on until the night he heard those heavy knockings on his door. Joseph thought his beloved wife has been released from jail when he saw a policewoman carrying his baby daughter in her hands. His released wife may be weak and sick and hence she cannot quickly climb the stairs up to the 3rd floor. For that reason, the kind Indian policewoman decided to help her by carrying her baby daughter. He then stretched his hands out and received his baby girl from the hands of the policewoman. By this time, the baby daughter had fallen asleep again. "This is your female child," the Indian policewoman spoke in a husky voice like that of an angry ogre. "Thank you, ma'am," Joseph responded with a happy and smiling face. "Thank you for bringing my wife and our baby daughter." I haven't brought your wife. She is still under detention. Joseph has not fully grasped the words of the policewoman. Instead of talking to her, he waited for her to explain why she had brought her baby daughter if her mother was still in jail. Okay, bye and have a good night. The policewoman spoke those dry words and turned her back and began to march away. Joseph rose his voice and said, "Ma'am, you haven't told me why my wife has sent her infant female baby back to her father. I was with her at the jail today afternoon, and she didn't inform me that she is planning to send our baby daughter home." The policewoman stopped, turned her face towards Joseph, and said harshly and loudly as if she is screaming in a fit of uncontrollable anger, "Your wife has been transferred to another prison out of Bombay." The Bombay Jail Authority, most probably, thought the environment in the new prison not appropriate for a female baby of this age. The policewoman has been told to pass that information to the father if he asked questions. Those officers who are waiting down in their unmarked police vehicle have instructed the female police officer and told her to speak half-truth and half-lie to the father of the baby daughter. Can I know the name of the new jail and to which city my wife has been sent? Such information is confidential. You have to talk to your wife's lawyer or the jail authority if you are interested in knowing where she has been transferred. My wife has no lawyer. The jail authority didn't allow her to appoint anyone to defend her in court. Then go to the jail and find out by yourself where she now. Joseph still has many questions and needed many explanations about the sudden transfer of his wife, but the huge Indian woman in khaki has already disappeared from his vision. He stood for some time trying to understand what had happened in jail that led the authorities to ship his wife overnight to another city. Joseph heard that when the Bombay jails have become overcrowded, the detainees will be transferred to other jails in Pune, Nashik, and Aurangabad cities. Therefore, he thought, due to overcrowding, his wife was transferred to one of those three cities. Having reached that conclusion, the father closed the door and took his beloved sleeping baby daughter Grace to the bedroom and carefully put her on the bed and sat near her. The handsome Ethiopian husband has remained awake throughout most of that night thinking about his beautiful Sudanese wife and wishing very soon she will be released and return to her family. Chapter 81. During her transit at Doha Hamad International Airport. At the time the baby daughter had been brought to her Ethiopian father, her Sudanese mother's plane had already taken off and headed towards the Middle East. That night, Joseph hardly slept for a couple of hours together. His sleep every now and then is interrupted by many bad dreams and horrifying nightmares. He is impatiently waiting for the morning to come so that he can go to the Women's Arthur Road jail and find out where his beloved Inaz was sent. It also happened, when the sun of the following day rose above the raging waves of the Arabian Sea in Bombay, in Doha 3 Arab policewomen fetched Inaz out of that coffin-like lockup room and began to walk her towards the gate of the Sudanese Airways plane. They replaced the handcuffs on her hands before they took her out. It is the final stage in her forceful extradition to Sudan. Inaz knows she is going to go directly from the Khartoum International Airport to one of the notorious ghost houses. One of those death concentration camps is going to be her toilet and grave. She knows she is going to be tried as an apostate from Islam and condemned, and after 3 days she will be put to death. Only a few minutes remained between her life and her final transfer to the land of her executioners. If her feet entered that damned Sudanese flying death, she will never see the daylight of freedom again. She will be placed in a dungeon that is darker than the black hearts of those who will dump her in it. It will be her last stop in life and her tomb. All of a sudden, the condemned to death Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Salah has remembered an apostate Arab girl who went through a similar situation. Just like God has supernaturally injected that memory in her mind that is clouded by hundreds of scary thoughts. Her mind is suddenly illuminated and enlightened by that divine recollection. The apostate Sudanese girl Inaz has remembered the Saudi teenage girl Rahaf Muhammad al-Qunan who escaped from her Saudi family because of her apostasy out of Islam. Additionally, she has also remembered that she is no longer a female citizen of Sudan. It was a long time ago since she voluntarily chose to become a female citizen of the world. Accordingly, the desperate girl Inaz Ahmed Sola has raised her voice and begun to scream loudly and tell people why she has been handcuffed and transferred from India to Sudan, and what is going to happen to her if she has reached her country. She is shouting her objections and pleadings in the Arabic language. The Arab passengers who have heard her words all concluded that she is out of her mind. They just crowded around her and the Arab police female guards who were forcefully dragging her. None of them had taken any action, but they began to look at them. The unexpected action of Inaz has taken the 3 policewomen by surprise. 2 of them are the same Arab female cops who escorted her from the Qatar plane and took her to the lockup room and kept her there for 7 hours. All that time, the detained Sudanese girl was quiet and easy to handle. Then the detained girl fell on the floor and continued to scream and begged the bystanders to rescue her life. By this time, the Arab policewomen have overcome the impact of the shock and therefore decided to apply the necessary force to take the female Sudanese detainee to her airplane. They bent over her body and took hold of her hands and feet and lifted her up. Inaz is jerking and twisting her body and rolling around on the empty air. The policewomen have not let go of her resisting body and began to move her forward. At those critical moments, the detained girl saw a white couple standing among the crowd. They are a handsome young white man and his pretty young European girlfriend. The pretty white girlfriend is using her phone and taking photos and also shooting a video of the handcuffed Sudanese girl and her female police guards. The detained girl began to speak to them in English. She told them she is a Sudanese refugee girl in Bombay and therefore the Indian Police Authority and those Arab female police guards are violating her rights as a female citizen of the world and transferring her to Sudan against her wish. She also told them that, because she converted from Islam to Christianity, the Sudanese embassy in India plotted many times with the Indian police in Bombay and New Delhi and tried to kidnap and extradite her to Sudan. She further said, if she reaches Sudan, she will be put to death as an apostate girl. Upon hearing her words, the pretty white girl at once stopped her action of documenting the abuse of a female detainee and came closer and shouted in a loud voice at the Arab policewomen. You can't abuse a young, detained woman in that inhumane way. She is not an animal. She is a human being like you and me. She is a criminal. We received orders from the Indian police to transfer her to her Sudanese airplane, responded one of the 3 Arab policewomen. Tell me what is my crime, the detained girl shouted loud enough to be heard by everybody. The Arab passengers have not concerned about her arrest and protests. They are not happy to hear a white woman shouting at their Arab policewomen. None of them has understood what has been said in English between the Sudanese girl and the white girl and the Arab policewomen. I don't care what is your crime. But I know you are a criminal girl, otherwise you won't be extradited to Sudan against your will. I am ready to give you the phone number of the UN office in New Delhi. You can talk to them, and they will back up my claim that I am a refugee girl in India. Those last words Inaz has spoken to the Arab policewoman are heard by a top Arab police officer in the Doha International Airport. Give me the phone number, the senior police officer has spoken in a loud voice which is challenging her. Everyone, including the detained girl, and the white couple turned their faces towards him. He reached Inaz and resumed his challenge. I can call them right away, and if I find your claim to be true, I will stop your transfer to your country, and I shall put you on the next available flight and send you back to India. He then took out of his pocket a pen and paper and handed them to the detained girl. With trembling hands and sweating body, the apostate Sudanese girl has taken the pen and paper from his hands and wrote down the phone number of the UN office. Then the pretty white girl resumed her video shooting. Her boyfriend also began to take photos of Inaz and the Arab senior police officer and the 3 policewomen. By then, the crowd had doubled. The Arab senior police officer dialed the number and switched on his cell phone speaker. He wants to show off rather than prove or disprove a claim of a detained Sudanese girl who is claimed to be innocent. He knows 99% of those Arab passengers are either illiterate or do not know English. Hello, sir. This is the senior police officer, Musab bin Hamdan, calling from the Hamad International Airport at Doha City of the state of Qatar. Yes, sir. How can I help you? We have a Sudanese girl here under our detention by the name. Hold on, sir. Mr. Musab bin Hamdan paused and looked at Anaz and then asked her, "What is your full name, girl?" "My name is Anaz Ahmed Silla." Her name is Anaz Ahmed Silla. She claimed she has refugee status in India. She also said she has been deported to her country by the Indian Police Authority against her wish. She further said she will be executed if she reaches Sudan. "Please hold on, sir. I have to check my computer." For minutes dragged by like 4 hours, while the unseen man on the other line is checking his computer and who about to pass the death or life sentence on the apostate girl. "She is absolutely right, sir. She should not be sent out of India without the knowledge of our UN office. This action of the Indian police is criminal in nature and against our international law and a violation of human rights. The life of the foreign student Inaz Ahmed Silla is under threat. For that reason, she has been granted refugee status in India. Therefore, in no uncertain terms, she should not be sent to Sudan." Upon hearing those saving words, the beautiful white girl has stopped shooting her video and run and hugged the unjustly detained Sudanese girl and begun to weep with her and congratulate her for her rescue and great victory. Chapter 82. The third narrow escape for the apostate Sudanese girl. The life of the most abused and persecuted Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Silla once again has been snatched from between the jaws of Islam at the right time. Her third narrow escape is nothing short of a miracle and divine intervention by her loving God, who is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient. If the Arab senior police officer, Mr. Musab bin Hamdan, had phoned 35 minutes before or 15 minutes later, the apostate girl's life would have come to an end. When he phoned, the UN office had just opened its doors 30 minutes ago. It was 6 a.m. in Doha City and 8:30 a.m. in New Delhi at the time his phone call came in. Also, if that phone call came 15 minutes later, it would have been answered by the biased Muslim female legal representative, Mrs. Salma Muhammad Ahmed, who hates Inaz more than her Sudanese people hate her. That evil woman had come 45 minutes late that particular day. Her usual arrival time was delayed due to a heavy traffic jam, which was caused by 2 cars' collision. A vehicle collided with another vehicle just 10 minutes away from the UN office. At the time of the accident, she was traveling from her apartment to the UN office in a double-decker bus. That day, if she had foreseen what was awaiting her in the UN office, she would not have come. If she is asked to choose, she might have chosen to flee to her native country Bangladesh and hide herself in her remote village all the rest of her life. That Doha phone call had exposed all the evils she had done to the terribly abused Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Silla. The male employee who responded to the call and confirmed her claim of refugee status in India is a senior officer in the UN. He is a Hindu man. Immediately after he ended the phone conversation, he went to the desk of Mrs. Salma Muhammad Ahmed and looked into the case of the Sudanese refugee girl Inaz. He had been astonished when he read some pages from the file bearing the name Inaz Ahmed Silla. At once, he carried the file to high authority and reported the infringements. His boss could not believe his eyes while he was going through the file. He understood that if the refugee girl Inaz had reached Sudan, the UN office in India would have been closed by their headquarters in Geneva. Her strong case was supposed to be accepted from day one. Or at the most, from the same day she was interviewed, her application was supposed to be approved, and she should have been sent for resettlement to a Western country within a week's time. There was not any reason or excuse to keep such a terribly abused and persecuted girl in India and expose her life to such high risk. After she applied for refugee status, the Sudanese embassy used some Indian police officers in Bombay and Muslim terrorists in New Delhi and tried to deport her to Sudan to face the death penalty for her apostasy. And worse than that, after those 2 conspiracies had been foiled, her strong case was unlawfully kept pending for such a long time. Even after she had been granted refugee asylum in India, her Muslim father attempted to murder her in Bombay City as an apostate girl. Despite all these atrocities that had been committed against her, her file had not been forwarded to any Western embassy for her resettlement in a country such as Canada, Australia, New Zealand, or the USA. When the female culprit had arrived, she found the UN office had been turned upside down. At once, she had been called in and confronted by the many infringements and violations of the rights of the Sudanese female refugee Inaz Ahmed Salah, which she had purposely and maliciously done. It was an intentional and malicious act and a profoundly serious crime. Consequently, she had been fired from her position, and a criminal case had been filed against her and referred to the New Delhi Police Authority. The wicked Muslim woman got arrested on the same day and thrown behind bars where she belonged. As she had anticipated, she got hammered mercilessly during her interrogation by 3 huge Hindu policewomen until she confessed her crimes. That done, the highest authority in the UN office contacted the Arab senior police officer who called earlier and informed him not to send Inaz back to India either. Then, the UN office demanded that the refugee girl Inaz Ahmed Salah has to be kept in a secured place in Qatar until her resettlement in another Western country is arranged. Meanwhile, the pretty white girl had uploaded the video on her Facebook page, YouTube, and Twitter. In a short time, her video had gone viral. Thousands of people around the world liked it and shared it through their Facebook pages as well as through other social media and emails. Therefore, the sad case of the apostate Sudanese girl received so much sympathy and worldwide support. After the second phone conversation, Inaz had been taken out of the Doha International Airport in a police car and booked in a nice hotel. The first thing the thrice miraculously freed girl has done, she called her lover and husband Joseph and broke to him first the bad news about her kidnap from the Bombay women's jail and the attempt to deport her to Sudan. Then, she reported to him the good news of her new miraculous escape. While she is crying and talking to him, Joseph is also bitterly weeping. Inaz told him how she got kidnapped again by the corrupt Indian police officers and the mental and physical tortures she went through during those long and difficult hours. She then told him how God intervened again and miraculously rescued her at the last moments. Inaz refused to give credit to herself. She said to her husband it is God who reminded her at the last moment of the case of the Saudi teenage apostate girl Rahaf Muhammad al-Qunan, who had escaped from her Saudi family because of her apostasy out of Islam. After that, Inaz inquired about their baby daughter. Joseph told her, "Grace with him and she is doing well." He then informed her how the Indian policewoman had lied to him by telling him his wife was transferred to another jail in another city. She claimed that the police authority thought the new confinement of the detained mother is not a suitable place for a baby girl of Grace's age. Lastly, Inaz assured her husband that her life is saved and secured, and now she is staying in a beautiful and safe hotel in Doha City, in the state of Qatar. Shortly after talking to his wife, Joseph received an urgent telephone call from Mr. Vijay Alexander, Mrs. Mary Alexander, and Miss Teresa Alexander, who are still in Singapore. They told him they have become extremely worried and frightened about what has happened to his Sudanese apostate wife in their absence. Mr. Alexander said, one of their friends in Bombay saw on the internet the video of the forceful transfer of Inaz in the Doha International Airport and forwarded it to them through their Facebook in the Messenger. Mrs. Mary Alexander and Miss Teresa Alexander have cried like girls who lost a very dear sister after seeing how those cruel Arab policewomen dragged and carried the innocent girl Inaz inside the Qatar International Airport. Mr. Alexander shouted and sharply rebuked the Ethiopian husband for not informing him about the unlawful detention of his Sudanese apostate wife. If he had phoned him and informed him about her illegal arrest, he said, he would have gotten her released in less than 24 hours. Joseph apologized and told him why his wife and he had decided not to interrupt the celebration of their happy marriage anniversary. Nevertheless, Mr. Alexander told Joseph he is going to contact his friend at the Bombay Criminal Investigation Department and find out from him who issued a warrant for arresting the Sudanese refugee girl Inaz Ahmed Salah and why she was detained and deported to Sudan. He further said, she is having a refugee status in India, and accordingly, her arrest and deportation are illegal acts and violations of international law and human rights. After a couple of days, the video of the terribly abused Sudanese girl which had been created and uploaded by the kind pretty white girl hit a record of 10 million viewers. Therefore, the apostate girl has been contacted and interviewed through the phone by the Arabic BBC, Al Jazeera TV, and Arabic France 24. She became overnight famous and known all over the Arab countries in the Middle East and North Africa. In Bombay, many Indian women, young and old, went on the streets and protested and demanded justice for the foreign female student Inaz Ahmed Sulla and punishment for those who unlawfully detained her and tried to extradite her to her Muslim country for her to be tried as a criminal girl and put to death for her so-called Islamic crimes of apostasy and adultery. They carried her photos in big banners and marched all over the cosmopolitan city. Therefore, her case once again turned the city of Bombay upside down. Of course, the only segment of the society who did not show sympathy and support to the rescued apostate girl are those Sudanese Muslim terrorist students. Every time, their demagogues in their satanic embassy plotted the kidnap and deportation of the innocent apostate girl Inaz, God frustrated their wicked scheme. 3 times, they kidnapped and attempted to send her to Sudan. 3 times, God snatched her from their hands and turned their victory in utter defeat and great shame. But their blinded eyes and darkened hearts could not see the power of God in that, but they attributed her 3 rescues to the devil which she is worshipping along with her infidel husband. Chapter 82. The shocking discovery of the Muslim women's rights activists. The serious case of the Muslim apostate girl Inaz Ahmed Sulla has generated international awareness and shed light on the way the woman is treated in the Third World in general and the Muslim world in particular. The woman in that dark part of the world is vulnerable to all kinds of abuse and exploitation. The Sudanese apostate girl Inaz has done no wrong to deserve such a huge amount of injustice. She only chose to change her religion from Islam to Christianity and married her lover Joseph Abraha, who happened to be from a different country and a follower of Christ. If a girl has done such a thing in the West, no one would harass her or persecute her. Shortly after her release, the miraculously rescued Sudanese apostate girl has been interviewed by a group of women's rights activists. Those women are all Arabs and all Muslims. Their interview dug deep into the past life of the terribly abused and persecuted Sudanese girl. They have been able to bring to the surface a startling discovery. Their shocking discovery has even astonished them and perplexed many other Muslim women. It has created paradoxical conclusions in the minds plus ambivalent feelings in the hearts of all Muslim women. It made them love and hate such shocking discovery. No one ever before those women's rights activists has arrived at such a great, amazing conclusion. They collectively reached the unavoidable conclusion that the real culprit behind all the evils that befell Inaz is none other than the religion that she had boldly and courageously forsaken. Their findings created so much anger, resentment, and protest across the Middle East. Many prominent religious scholars and leaders in Egypt, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and other Arab countries through all media and internet avenues openly expressed their indignation and denounced the interview of those Muslim feminists. They refused to address them as women's rights activists, but referred to them as Arab feminists. They called them man-haters and lesbians. Some of them demanded legal action to be taken against them, while some condemned them as female apostates from Islam and called for their punishment in accordance with the Sharia law. The Arab women's rights activists traced the root of the abuses and persecutions of the apostate girl, which went beyond those Sudanese diplomats and students in India who hate her and made several attempts to destroy her life. Starting from her Muslim father, who made 3 attempts to slay her. Firstly, her father almost killed her in Pune city when he heard a mere rumor that his Arab daughter married an African Sudanese boy by the name of Tariq Haroun al-Ajabo without his knowledge and consent. The women's rights activists found out there are authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which said a marriage of a girl without the permission of her wali, father, or another guardian is invalid. So, the Muslim father, empowered and supported by such a hadith, he could not be condemned alone without pointing a finger at the founder of Islam, who gave him this absolute right on the life of his daughter to control her and decide who to marry. Secondly, her father and mother punished her and locked her up inside a dark room because she ran away from her first Arab husband Osama Hashim Sulla, whom she accused of being a gay pimp. and abusive husband who sold his wife through gambling to 7 Saudis who all of them had raped her in his apartment. Moreover, Inaz was condemned by the Muslim society and the Islamic Sharia law in Saudi Arabia because she left her evil husband's apartment in Jeddah City without his knowledge and without a male muharram and ran away from him. Again, there is an authentic hadith of the Prophet of Islam which forbids the woman to go out of her house without the company of her husband or male muharram, such as her father or brother. Instead of trying to find out whether Inaz was truly being abused by her first Sudanese husband and his Saudi friends, the Islamic law and the Muslim society put the blame on her and condemned her as a rebellious wife who deserved to be given 200 lashes. Her bold action was counted as rebellion. The Quran gives her father the right to beat his rebellious daughter and her husband to hammer his rebellious wife. See Surah Al-Nisa 4, verse 34. Thirdly, her father became extremely furious when he came to know his daughter had forsaken Islam and become a Christian. He decided to go to India and punish her for the abominable apostasy she had done. Islam strictly forbids conversion to another religion and prescribes capital punishment to an apostate. This severe punishment is based on authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad, which are mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Also, the first rightly guided caliph, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq, fought against the Muslim apostates and killed many of them. Accordingly, her outraged Muslim father traveled all the way to Pakistan and smuggled himself across the Indian border. He then purchased a dagger and a big stick and attacked his daughter and her Christian husband. If her Ethiopian husband did not courageously defend his Sudanese wife, her dangerous Muslim father would have beheaded her in broad daylight. The criminal's father was arrested, tried, condemned, and sentenced to 10 years jail term under hard labor. At present, he is serving his sentence in a maximum security prison in Bombay City. By condemning her imprisoned father, the Indian secular court was also indirectly condemned Islam, which gave him the right to kill his apostate Muslim daughter. This is in one of the authentic hadiths in which the Prophet Muhammad said, "Whoever changes his religion, kill him." After talking about the abusive and tyrant father, the Arab Muslim women's rights activists shifted their focus to the Sudanese embassy in India, which plotted 3 times the kidnap and transfer of the apostate Muslim girl Inaz to Sudan to stand trial of apostasy. In their first attempt, they sent 2 Sudanese diplomats to Bombay to execute their plot, which was hatched inside the embassy. Those 2 diplomats bribed some Muslim police officers and through them raided the apartment of the apostate girl Inaz and her Christian husband and falsely accused them of drug dealers. They then threw the Ethiopian husband behind bars and took his Sudanese wife Inaz directly to the Bombay International Airport and attempted to deport her to Sudan against her wish. Their plot was foiled at the last moment by a good Indian Christian man. In consequence of that, the 2 diplomats and a leader of the Sudanese Muslim Brotherhood in Bombay City were arrested and Inaz was rescued from those corrupt Muslim police officers. Of course, the Sudanese embassy did what it did because Islam has zero tolerance for the sin of apostasy. There is no freedom of choice in this regard. Any Muslims who forsake Islam according to the Sharia law must be killed. In the second attempt, the embassy resorted to an eviler plot than the first. They hired antisocial elements in India known as Gandas. Those dangerous gangsters are Muslim terrorists. They paid them for carrying out their dirty work. Those Muslim terrorists dressed up as police officers and raided the apartment where Inaz and her husband were staying with some southern Sudanese Christians in New Delhi. They also falsely accused Inaz and another Indian girl of being prostitutes in disguise and arrested them. 4 of them took the Indian girl to a farmhouse and brutally raped her, while the remaining 2 took Inaz in a taxi to the New Delhi International Airport and tried to put her in a direct flight and send her to Khartoum to stand trial and execution for her apostasy and daring to marry an infidel Christian man. Islam strictly forbids the Muslim woman from marrying a non-Muslim man. Somehow, Inaz managed to fool her 2 kidnappers at the Delhi International Airport and escaped from them. The Sudanese embassy's third attempt is the current one, which had been frustrated by Inaz herself during her transit in the Doha International Airport. Like before, the Sudanese embassy enlisted the help of some Muslim top officials in the Bombay police enforcement to carry their third evil scheme of kidnapping and extraditing the apostate girl Inaz to Sudan. Therefore, Muslims' fingerprints are always found in all the evil plots against the apostate girl Inaz Ahmed Salah. In the last attempt, she was falsely accused of being the main cause of a religious riot, which resulted in the death of many Sudanese students in India. Therefore, she was arrested, severely flogged, and forced by the corrupt police of Bombay to admit crimes she had not done. She was not allowed to have a lawyer to defend her in court. As a matter of fact, she was condemned by those Muslim police officers without appearing in any court of law. She was having with her inside the jail her 6-year-old baby daughter Grace Abraha. The Indian police took her baby from her lap and on the same day put her in a Qatar Airways plane and flown her to the Hamad International Airport. Neither the Muslim apostate girl nor her Christian husband was informed about the extradition until the last moment. Inaz came to know about the third evil scheme only at the Bombay International Airport. In front of the airport, her baby daughter was snatched from her hands and taken away and given to her Ethiopian father. At that difficult moment, Inaz was told she was not going to see her baby daughter again. Then the police of Bombay told her they were extraditing her to her country with the help of her Sudanese embassy. Her embassy provided the emergency traveling document and her air ticket. Her final destination was the Khartoum International Airport and not the Doha Hamad International Airport. If Inaz had reached Khartoum, she would be cast into a dark dungeon known as the Ghost House. Any person who entered one of those Sudanese concentration camps did not come out again. And in case Inaz has reached Sudan, she would have been tried by a Sharia court in Khartoum. She would be condemned as an apostate from Islam and put to death for her apostasy and adultery of getting married to an infidel Christian man. After her execution, her corpse should be burned with fire. The Sharia law forbids the burial of the apostate from Islam. His dead body has to be treated like a carcass of a dead animal and disposed of in an inhumane manner. The two rightly guided caliphs, Abu Bakr al-Siddiq and Ali ibn Abi Talib, both burned the executed bodies of the apostates from Islam. After mentioning those horrifying details about her father's 3 attempts to murder her and the 3 plots of kidnapping and trying to deport her to her Muslim country by the Sudanese embassy, the Arab women's rights activists briefly stated the heavy persecutions that the Sudanese apostate girl was subjected to by the Sudanese Muslim students at the University of Bombay. Inaz is hated, boycotted, and persecuted by her country's fellow citizens because of her conversion from Islam to Christianity and falling in love with a handsome Ethiopian Christian boy who at present is studying medicine at the University of Bombay. Lastly, the Arab Muslim women's rights activists mentioned a childhood abuse that Inaz was subjected to as a little girl by her own parents. They referred to her female genital mutilation, which had been done to her at the age of 5. The activists found 3 authentic hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad which endorsed that barbaric and inhumane practice. The first hadith is mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, the second hadith is included in Sahih Muslim, and the third hadith by Sunan Abu Dawud. Therefore, the parents should not be blamed alone, but the religion which encouraged such evil practice at fault as well. In conclusion, the underlying cause of her abuses and persecutions is the religion of Islam. The Arab Muslim women's rights activists' great discovery is like that of the Copernican revolution in the West. If their conclusion is accepted, it will definitely bring about a huge paradigm shift in the Middle East and North Africa. It will change the Muslim world from a religious society to a secular society. The Copernican revolution was the paradigm shift from the Ptolemaic model of the heavens, which described the cosmos as having Earth stationed at the center of the universe, to the heliocentric model with the sun at the center of the solar system. Accordingly, those Arab Muslim women's rights activists want to change the universally accepted theory which put the Muslim scholars, leaders, clerics, imams, terrorist groups, and terrorists in the center of criticism, and that by putting all the blame on them and falsely accusing them of misinterpreting the peaceful Islamic texts, the Quran and hadiths, which as they say put the woman in the best status. Nevertheless, according to their new theory, the religion of Islam and its founder are supposed to be the center of all attacks and refutations. The teachings of the Quran and Hadiths inspired the Muslim scholars to come up with all those terrorizing doctrines and misogynistic teachings. Therefore, the teachings of the Quran and the Hadiths of Muhammad inevitably produce abusers and terrorists. Their conclusion proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Islam is an inherently violent and evil religion. As such, it can neither be reformed nor improved. Islam had long ago been interpreted and fixed in rigid religious laws which are embodied in the draconian law that came to be known as the Sharia law. Accordingly, Islam is the only religion in the world that is not open to criticism and reformation. To reform Islam is to destroy its shell and set its followers once and for all free from its misogynistic teachings and tyrannical doctrines. Accordingly, there is no such thing as modern Islam or moderate Muslims. As practical examples, the Muslim women's rights activists referred to the case of the Saudi teenage girl who left Islam when she discovered it is the cause of her abuse and suffering and sought refuge asylum and resettled in Toronto City, in Canada. Likewise, the recent case of the two Saudi sisters, a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old, who apostatized out of Islam and fled to Hong Kong in China, and demanded to be resettled in a country that endorses and encourages women's rights and the right of apostasy. The law of apostasy in Islam, which punishes the apostate by death, is against Article 18 of the Charter of Human Rights, which gives every individual the right to change his religion and follow any other religion he chooses. The apostasy of the Sudanese girl Inaz and the conversion of those 3 Saudi young girls are like hidden tsunami beneath a frozen sea of snow or mountain of a glacier or molten lava of a volcano waiting for a small crack to erupt. In Egypt alone, 2 million youth left Islam and became atheists. By their conversions and demands, those 4 young Muslim girls had rebelled against all their religious restrictions and their draconian social system that embodied in the Sharia law, which showed favor to the Muslim males and allowed them to oppress their women as daughters, sisters, and wives. Therefore, if the conclusion of those Arab Muslim women's rights activists is accepted, then the Middle East will change overnight into a secular society, same as the secular Western countries and other free societies which gave the woman equal rights with the man. Instead of seeing the Saudi women putting on black burqas which make them look like scary black ghosts, we will see them walking in the streets of Riyadh, Mecca, and Medina in shirts and trousers. Likewise, in Iran and Afghanistan, we can see girls on the beaches and swimming pools in their bikinis. In Somalia and Sudan, women can go all alone to movie theaters and sit side by side with their male counterparts. In Pakistan and Yemen, girls can fall in love with boys and choose their life partners. Also, instead of walking behind their husbands and fathers like male jailers and female prisoners, we will see them walking hand in hand with their lovers, work colleagues, and their schoolmates. Nevertheless, this inevitable conclusion by the Arab women's rights activists stirred up the religious sentiments of Muslims in the Middle East, North Africa, and around the world. Muslims protested and condemned the apostate Sudanese girl Inaz Ahmed Salah and those who interviewed her in the Arab media and drew their false conclusion. They said, Islam is innocent of those malicious accusations and as such has nothing to do with the evils that her imprisoned Muslim father and her Sudanese embassy in India had done to her. Some intellectual Muslims argued that the Arab women's rights activists had used a fallacious method which led them to arrive at that wrong evaluation and unfair conclusion against a heavenly religion which was revealed by the Almighty God to his infallible Prophet Muhammad, who has been sent as mercy to mankind.